The 2018 Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series. Brought to you from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting. The Democratic race for the 7th Congressional District.
Good morning. I'm Karen Greer, an anchor for CBS 46. Welcome to the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series, originating from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting in Atlanta. This is the debate among Democratic candidates for Georgia's Congressional District 7. District 7 includes parts of Northeast Atlanta, including Norcross, Cumming, Lawrenceville, and Duluth. Let's meet the candidates. They are in alphabetical order. Kathleen Allen is a founder of Paid in America, a nonprofit that helps consumers and job seekers find companies that pay a living wage. Carolyn Bordeaux, who's been a professor at Georgia State's Andrew Young School of Policy Studies since 2003. Melissa Davis is an advisory committee member with the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. David Kim is a publisher of Teen Link, a national media outlet focused on writing, art, photos, and forums for teens. Ethan Pham is an attorney in Gwinnett County and an advocate for immigrants in Metro Atlanta. And Steve Riley is a partner in the Lawrenceville law firm of Andrew Merritt, Riley & Smith, LLP. Now let's meet our panelists for this morning. Giancarlo Cifuentes is the regional news director at Univision Atlanta. Doug Richards, a reporter with WXIA TV here in Atlanta. And Kurt Yeomans is a senior writer at the Gwinnett Daily Post. Now let's get started. For the rules on today's debate, please visit the Atlanta Press Club website, atlantapressclub.org. Now, to start the debate, each candidate will be asked one question by one of the panelists. Giancarlo Cifuentes, you will get the first question to Carolyn Bordeaux.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. I wanted to ask you all, and starting with you, what is your point of view on the immigration system? Should Congress be working on an inclusive immigration reform? And separately, what is your point of view on the DACA Dreamers? Should they be able to be allowed to continue staying here and work their future in the United States?
Yes, thank you. I think we need an immigration policy that is founded on human dignity and also recognizes the economic reality around our immigration policy. I met a young woman last year whose sister had been going to become a nurse at Gwinnett Medical Center. She went to her mother. She'd filled out all of the paperwork, went to her mother and said, you know, I just need one line filled out here. And it was her Social Security number. And her mother said, I'm so sorry. I never told you, but I brought you over when you were 1 month old, and you don't have that. And so she was not able to get that job. We absolutely must have a solution for the Dreamers. Now this young woman faces being deported back to a country she never even knew she was from. Beyond that also, though, America has always benefited from attracting the best and brightest and those who are hardworking. And I absolutely celebrate the diversity and energy of our immigrant communities.
All right. Thank you very much, Doug Richards. You may now ask David Kim a question.
All right. David, if you could undo one thing about President Trump, what would be tops on your list?
Wow, one thing is a hard ask, but I think we need to make sure that the Affordable Care Act is reinforced and strengthened instead of being torn away and broken by the current president and the Congress. I mean, it's a shame that we are kicking millions off of insurance. You know, we need to make sure that insurance is more accessible, that insurance is working. We need to make sure that we lower prescription drug prices. That's one of the first things that I will do if I'm in Congress, is make sure that our government is allowed to negotiate those prices so that we can fix our insurance system. We can also make sure that the subsidies come back for those who are low income, as well as making sure that the insurance system is working for all citizens here in the 7th as well as in the country.
All right, thank you very much. Kurt Yeomans, your question will be to Kathleen Allen.
Kathleen, one of the things that you say on your website is fostering green infrastructure. How would you approach carbon emissions? Should it be addressed something like the carbon fee that groups like the Gwinnett Citizens Climate Lobby has advocated, or is there another approach?
I agree with this Climate Citizens Lobby, and I have supported their effort to have a carbon fee, if you will. I think we also need to stop subsidizing fossil fuels. We need to shift our investment in this country to sustainable energy sources and integrate that in with our infrastructure system. My family took a trip last year across the United States, and it was amazing to see the number of windmills that are being erected all across the Midwest. I think that we need to have more of those in Georgia, where we have more wind available at the coastal areas. So, yes, I believe that environmental sustainability is a very important part of our infrastructure development in the coming decades.
All right, thank you. Giancarlo, your next question to Steve Riley.
Steve, how would you improve the education system, the programs for K-12 and college if you become the next U.S. rep?
I think it's critical that we improve K through 12, high school, college, secondary education, all of the public education system. That's a key to restoring middle-class economic opportunity in America. In terms of K through 12, I think a lot of the initiatives that were started during the Obama administration when Arne Duncan was education secretary were good, solid initiatives that moved our public school system forward. Our current Education Secretary Betsy DeVos is trying to take things backwards. We've got to stop that as a Congress. In terms of college, I think we need to take a look at making college, public college and universities, tuition free to all Americans. I think that's a very important thing that Bernie Sanders talked about during the presidential election. At the time, it was suggested that was too expensive. In reality, it's more than affordable if we're willing to make some reasonable tweaks to the tax code to fund that.
All right, thank you. Doug, back to you. Your question to Ethan Pham.
Mr. Pham, the Environmental Protection Agency currently seems to be emphasizing the deregulation of environmental laws rather than increasing or enforcing existing environmental laws and regulations. Is there anything about that that's good in your opinion? Is there a middle ground between perhaps what they're trying to do in terms of deregulation and the Democratic position of better environmental enforcement?
There is nothing good about what they're trying to do. I don't know if you all travel to parts of Asia or not, but over in places like Vietnam and China, they are experiencing high levels of pollution over there. I was in Vietnam just a couple of years ago, and 5 minutes after I walked out of the hotel room, I swiped my finger off my face, and there was a layer of dust on my finger. And so this issue is very personal to me. Having grown up in a country where there are no rules to regulate pollution, and it's very unfortunate that we have an American president who has put in charge as the head of the EPA someone who is a climate change denier, someone who doesn't believe in the science. They are listening to the conspiracy theorists and not the scientists. And when I'm congressman, I will do everything I can to make sure that the protections for the EPA remain in place so that our environment will be protected. What is so wrong with leaving a cleaner planet to our children and grandchildren?
All right, thank you. And Kurt, your final question in this round for Melissa Davis.
Melissa, I'm going to jump back to education for a second. You mentioned on your website you have some issues with the policies that have come out of Washington in the past regarding education, and you mentioned items such as vocational training and STEM or STEAM. What is the approach you would like to see taken? Is it funding for education-related programs? Is it taking another crack at curriculum? For you, what is it? Yes,
thank you for the question. As a person who came from a very rural area, it's very personal for me because I grew up in Dillon, South Carolina, and Dillon was ranked last in the country for education. And so I believe that the resources need to remain in public education. We need to make sure that the classrooms are appropriately sized, and the teachers have the resources that they need in order to give all of the students, every student, regardless of where they live, an opportunity for an adequate education. And so for me, it's very important that we put the proper resources and make education equal and give everyone an equal opportunity to achieve their highest potential. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And that concludes the first portion of this debate. The candidates will now ask a question to one of their opponents. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to ask the question, then 60 seconds to respond and answer, 30 seconds for a rebuttal. By random selection, David Kim, you're going to ask the first question to one of your opponents.
You know, the candidate I really want to ask a question to isn't here. You know, it's our incumbent, Rob Woodall. You know, Rob promised to cut deficits, balance the budget, and yet he broke his promise. He increased our debt by $2 trillion, financed by China, and that was just this year alone.
All right, well, and we've got a 30-second rebuttal on that.
Well, we know that our congressman is not receptive to who we are and doesn't listen to what our needs are. For myself, I want to make sure that the people in our district deserve better representation. The truth is we have to stop fighting amongst ourselves here if we're going to win in November. You know, the question is really, can we all get around who the Democratic candidate is eventually and pull all our heart to make sure that person wins? I mean, if we can get a show of hands, who's willing to make that support in November? That's what we need to do.
All right, Kathleen Allen, you now may ask a question to one of your fellow candidates.
Thank you. My question is for Carolyn Bordeaux. Healthcare providers earn less money from treating Medicare patients than treating patients with other forms of insurance, causing some doctors to limit the number of Medicare patients they're willing to treat. If you make the public option available, how do you guarantee that with that influx of patients, that they get the care that they need when they need it?
Okay, so one of the things that I've talked about in terms of reforming healthcare, we'll start with the basics, which is that I believe that every man, woman, and child in this country deserves access to quality, affordable healthcare. And my proposal is that we go back, we fix the Affordable Care Act, and we introduce a public option to the exchange. Now, the question here is, you know, how do we make sure that doctors are going to cover people? Well, first of all, right now, in the 7th Congressional District, there are 110,000 people who do not have health insurance in the first place. So we have an enormous amount of uncompensated care that doctors are dealing with. If we have a public option, if we expand Medicaid, which also needs to happen, then doctors will have a lot more patients who are paying, which will help cover costs.
All right, rebuttal.
My concern with the public option is that I work for an organization that saw 25,000 new members in January. We had 9 months to prepare by hiring new doctors, pulling them in from other regions so that they would get the care that they need. But if you do not have a staff model and you have other forms of payment that pay higher, I don't see how you are going to get doctors to want to treat those patients that they're getting less money for.
All right, Steve Riley, it's your turn now to ask a question.
Thank you. This question is for David Kim. David, there's an issue that's not really been discussed much in the campaign trail to this point. I want to ask you about that issue. Our nation's been at war in Afghanistan now for 17 years. We've lost more than 2,200 Americans killed in action, more than 20,000 wounded. When all is said and done, we'll have spent upwards of $1 trillion on that conflict. What is your position on continued American military involvement in Afghanistan?
Yeah, we need to make sure, Steve, that we do everything in our power to, protect our troops, make sure that their lives are really considered before taking any military action. What really bothers me in this particular issue is that our Congress continues to forego its constitutional duty to declare war. There is a current War Powers Act that Congress is contemplating right now. It's a bipartisan issue, and we as congresspeople, as your future congressmen, will absolutely vote for that War Powers Act, make sure that our Congress properly deliberates any action that we take so that our troops are not unnecessarily put in harm's way. The other thing that I want to add is that I am appalled how our veterans are being treated currently. We do not have a Secretary of Veteran Affairs, and we need to do something to make sure that Trump protects our troops and protects our veterans.
Rebuttal?
As the only military veteran in this race, having served 4 years of active duty in the United States Army, This is an issue that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. I think America needs a new plan for the war in Afghanistan, a plan that envisions us disengaging from military operations over there and turning that conflict back over to the Afghans. I think in addition, we need for Congress to reassert its constitutional role in deciding when and where to fight wars, instead of leaving those decisions to an imperial president who's ensconced in the Oval Office or on the weekend down at Mar-a-Lago.
Carolyn Bordeaux, your question for one of your opponents.
Okay. My question is also for David Kim. When Donald Trump was running against Hillary Clinton, we saw him having rallies where they had a woman in a cage, and the people in the rallies would scream, "Lock her up, lock her up." Donald Trump would also, threaten Secretary Clinton. We knew that he was racist. We knew that he would dismantle environmental protections. We knew that he would try to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. My question for you is, why didn't you vote in 2016?
You can blame us or join us. Like many Americans, I was focused on my family, my faith, and my work. 2016 woke me up, like a lot of people. And the truth is, we've lost every election in this congressional district since 1992. To win, we're going to have to inspire thousands of folks, first-time, first-generation immigrant families who have the ability to vote, who are eligible but have not. We need to bring them in, not scare them off.
Your rebuttal?
When I go to vote, I take my son with me because I think it is really a sacred trust. It is something very important that we do. And, I just want to raise the concern that this is something you're going to need, to defend. It is a big jump to go from never having voted to running for the U.S. Congress.
All right, Melissa Davis, who would you like to question in this round?
Yes, I'd like to pose the question to Ms. Bordeaux. There have been several states that have decriminalized marijuana. And now that we're having conversations on the federal level about perhaps decriminalizing on the federal level, what is your position on those that have already been convicted and incarcerated for marijuana?
Yes. Thank you. We have enormous disparity in our criminal justice system. Nationally, African Americans and Hispanics make up 24% of our population, but they make up over 70% of the people in our prisons. And that needs to be addressed. You are correct, we need to go through and very carefully evaluate many of the sentences that we have done in the past. Marijuana now is, much more commonly perceived as more of a nuisance drug, rather than something that people really should be locked up for. And we need to go back and evaluate those sentences. And as your Congresswoman, I will make a commitment to making sure that we address the racial disparities in our criminal justice system.
In your rebuttal?
Thank you. And that is true. As a person of color, it's very personal for me. We do have a disproportionate number of African Americans in particular who are incarcerated. And while we are having these discussions about marijuana and opioids, I believe that we really need to have a discussion about some of the events that have taken place in the communities of color that were ignored. We never really fully addressed crack cocaine, and that's something that I believe that we really need to do as a country. Thank you so much.
Time. Ethan Pham, you have the final question in this round.
Thank you. So this question is for Kathleen Allen. Kathleen, if you weren't in the race, who would you support?
I would support Steve Riley because he has a long history in Gwinnett County. He's a true blue Democrat. He is about as progressive as I am. And I don't know that I can hope for anybody to be quite as progressive as I am. But I would support Steve Riley.
So I personally would support Melissa Davis. She and I, we share similar backgrounds, similar experiences, and we share similar values. And I believe that, because she's lived in the district for a number of years, that she will be a good representative for the people of District 7. She'll make a wonderful congresswoman.
Interesting question. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right, that concludes this round. For those just joining us, this is the debate between the Democratic candidates for Georgia's Congressional District 7. We'll now go back to the panel to ask questions, some tough questions from over here. The candidate of his or her choice until we run out of time. As a point of moderator, I'll take a privilege here or there to ask a question as well. The candidates, I'll determine when a rebuttal is actually appropriate for you all. Giancarlo Cifuentes, we're going to begin with you for the first question in this round.
Sure. So my question is for Mr. Riley. It usually happens, your district has about 18% of Hispanic residing in your district. And it usually happens in other races where during the campaigns, the Hispanic voters get a lot of the sweet talk from the candidates. But once they make it to office, the doors are shut, and it has happened in the governor's race before, a couple of years before. So my question to you is, what guarantees do the Hispanic voters have that if you become the next U.S. rep for District 7, what guarantees do they have that the door is going to be open for them?
The 7th District and Gwinnett County in particular have become incredibly diverse communities in recent years. It's going to be critical to have a congressman that doesn't just stay in Washington and conduct telephone town hall meetings like our current incumbent, Rob Woodall. We need a congressman that's going to come down, come back home, meet with all of the folks who need to have a place at the table, all of the different groups in the communities, Latinos included. Make sure that their views, their concerns are heard, and make sure that they understand they're a critical part of moving this country forward. A big issue, of course, of interest in the Latino community is immigration reform. We've got to have comprehensive immigration reform. There was a bipartisan bill passed through the Senate in 2013 that would have resolved so much of that issue, including creating a path to citizenship for the Dreamers. That was never permitted a vote in the U.S. House. I would press for a vote on comprehensive immigration reform as a priority.
All right, Doug Richards, you have the next question.
Carolyn Bordeaux, I'd like to ask you, if you were in Congress now, and this is kind of a yes or no question with an explanation perhaps afterward, if you were in Congress now and had an opportunity to vote to repeal the tax cut that many of your constituents are now enjoying, would you vote to repeal it now?
Yes, I think we need to repeal it and revisit those issues. That was not a tax cut. That was a cash advance on our national credit card. And it is very heavily weighted towards corporations and towards very wealthy individuals. It is going to add to the debt $1.5 trillion. And we need to revisit that entire thing. Yes, the corporate tax rate needs to be cut, but when you cut it, you need to close the loopholes, such as the tax break for ownership of private jets, such as the tax break that hedge fund managers get. So we need to go back and revisit this tax bill, reweight it towards working families.
Thank you.
All right, Kurt Yeomans.
This also is addressed to Ms. Bordeaux. So you mentioned on your website the need for affordable health care. Let's say you're elected, but end up serving in a Republican-led House that has shown it wants to repeal Obamacare. How do you go forward on ensuring affordable health care in that kind of environment?
Yes. So I take a lot of pride. I have worked with Republicans and I have worked with Democrats throughout my life. When I worked for Senator Ron Wyden as a legislative aide, every single bill that I worked on was bipartisan. And so I'm very comfortable trying to work in a bipartisan environment. I think there are a lot of Republicans who are ready to get on board with things like expanding Medicaid and with restoring the Affordable Care Act. Now, we have to have some changes in Congress, of course. But there are hospitals, there are chambers of commerce in Georgia and throughout southern states who recognize that this is in the best interest of their state to have this kind of health care reform. And what I would do is work with them to go to their members and build a coalition to solve the problem.
All right. Thank you so much. And Cifuentes, Mr. Giancarlo, it's up to you now.
Okay. My next question will be for Mr. Kim. I would like to find out what's your point of view on gun control, and should teachers be allowed to carry their guns on schools?
Yeah, I mean, teachers should not be allowed to carry guns onto schools. We need to make sure that, our schools are safe and secure when parents drop their kids off. When it comes to gun control, we need to make sure that we get sensible gun reform laws passed. 97% of the American people believe in universal background checks. We're not getting that done. We need to make sure that the gun show loopholes are closed. We need to also make sure that those who've been convicted of a violent crime or domestic abuse also don't get access to guns. Getting military-style weapons off the streets is another priority. Those are the things that I'll vote on as your congressman. I think it's a tragedy when our Congress continues to do nothing. We just had a recent shooting over in Tennessee at the Waffle House when the Secret Service themselves identified that individual as not needing to have those guns, and he was given those guns back the next day. We need to stop that. We need to make sure we have a change in Congress.
Giancarlo, that was one of the questions I was going to have for the entire panel. So if we could get everybody 60 seconds to answer that question. Steve, we'll go with you now.
We need significant gun control reform, gun control legislation in this country. We've needed it for a long time. That starts with universal background checks on all firearms purchases. It continues with returning to a ban on assault weapons, such as that existed between 1994 and 2004, a ban on extended magazines, a ban on bump stocks, and we need to pass this bill that's been bouncing around the U.S. House that serves to incentivize the states to create gun violence restraining orders. Those are orders similar to what we call a family violence protective order here in Georgia. It is an order where a citizen can go to court and petition the court to take up the firearms of someone in the community who's showing behaviors that suggest that they're likely to use those firearms unlawfully. We need to pass that bill right now.
All right.
We live in a first world country, not the battlefield that was Vietnam or Afghanistan anymore. Our kids should not be getting slaughtered left and right, day in, day out. I'm getting sick and tired of our politicians giving us thoughts and prayers after thoughts and prayers. We need to do more. Bump stocks, we need to do away with them. AR-15s and AK-47s, they don't need to be in the streets of America. We need to get rid of them. I was down at the state capitol a few weeks ago marching alongside our youth to, in the March of Our Lives event. I was so proud of them. They have for the first time taken the narrative on the gun issue out of the hands of the NRA and are now in charge of this gun debate. We need to do more. We need to get involved and help make sure that this momentum rolls along, because if we don't elect more leaders who are willing to make the hard decisions on gun issues, the ones that are left will be the ones who are beholden to the NRA. We've got a congressman from District 7, Congressman Rob Woodall, who has said that he doesn't believe there should be any kind of federal legislation dealing with gun laws. That's how extreme they are. We need to get rid of them. We need to vote on May 22nd and in November.
Ethan, should teachers be armed in the classrooms?
They should not. It's unconscionable that we have leaders in government saying that we don't have enough money for books and computers, and yet in the same breath, they tell us, let's set aside money for bullets and guns to arm our teachers. That is unconscionable.
All right, Melissa?
I am a mother of a beautiful 11-year-old daughter. And when I send my child to school, I tell her I love her, tell her have a wonderful day, and learn as much as she can. I do not think that that's the last time I will speak to my child. I send her to school to get an education, not to be shot and killed. I absolutely support increasing the purchasing age for guns. I certainly believe that we need common sense gun laws. We need to ban assault rifles. All the things that the other candidates said are absolutely true. But we also have to have a conversation about why this is happening. We're talking about all the things we need to do in order to prevent people from having legal guns. But what about people who are getting gunned down in their communities, just going to their home, going to the grocery store, going to church? We need to talk about the systemic problems that are in these communities, and that's a conversation that we're not having. So as your Congresswoman, I will have a conversation not only about strengthening the laws, but talking about what we need to do to take these illegal guns out of the streets.
Yes or no? Do teachers need to have guns in
Teachers
the
do
classrooms?
not need to be armed with guns.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. My answer is probably not going to sound that different. I think we need to have a ban on assault weapons, a ban on high-capacity magazines, a ban on bump stocks. We need to expand, make sure we have a universal background check that closes the gun show loophole, and we need to make sure that the universal background check, the information that flows into that, is complete and includes things like domestic violence. I will say, you know, as I've talked to people around the district, I've talked to Republicans. I talked to a guy, I think he gave $10,000 to the Georgia Republican Party. And he said, I am a Republican, I do support Rob Woodall, but my wife is a teacher, and I don't think she should have a gun in the classroom. And I think, getting rid of AR-15s is okay. So do I think that teachers should have guns? Absolutely not, right? We do not need to have our children to be in more danger.
All right, Carolyn Bordeaux, thank you. Kathleen Allen?
My answer comes from my 12-year-old daughter who is in middle school in a public school in Gwinnett County, and my son, who is a freshman at Norcross High School. No, their teachers should not have guns. As my daughter put it, I'm there to learn, not to worry. I agree with the suggestions that the other candidates have made. One thing that I would add is that I believe that we need to have a federal sales tax on ammunition. And we need to use that funding to support mental health services in our communities and in our schools. Because all too often what we don't talk about when we talk about gun deaths are suicides. And those make up half the gun deaths in America. But they don't get big news because it's not lots of victims on one day. So that funding needs to support getting counselors in our schools, getting mental health professionals in our communities, and helping folks avoid suicide by gun.
All right, my colleague Doug Richards has a question for all of the panelists.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. We'll start with you, Ms. Allen. If you were in Congress right now, would you be favorably or unfavorably disposed toward an impeachment resolution for President Trump?
I would not at this time. I believe, having studied government in college, I studied government and French, essentially diplomacy. U.S. foreign policy was my emphasis. And one of the things that I have truly appreciated about our democracy is the different branches. And I believe that the Mueller investigation needs to continue and be completed before Congress considers any impeachment proceedings. However, I would caveat that if President Trump makes an attempt to end the investigation prematurely, then we should be considering impeachment proceedings before the Mueller investigation is complete.
All right, Carolyn Bordeaux.
Yes, so one of the reasons I'm running is to be a strong check on President Trump and a check on his agenda. And I also think we need to ask certain things of him, such as for him to show his tax returns. That being said, I do think that we need to be very careful about impeachment. It is something that can destabilize the country. I don't expect President Trump to be honorable, like someone, well, sort of Richard Nixon was, in that he at least stepped down, when he was facing those kinds of charges. I think he'll, try to take everybody else down with him if that is to happen. So I think we have to be very careful. We have to see what comes out of the Mueller investigation and then, evaluate the evidence.
Melissa Davis.
Yes, I agree with the first two candidates. I do believe that we have to let the Mueller investigation continue to play out. This is a democracy. We as citizens like to know that there's a rule of law and that we will have a fair day in court. So I believe that we should certainly let this investigation play out. And I do think that we will have justice very soon. So I do not support right now an impeachment for the president, although the evidence is still being laid out. And so until we have all those details, right now I do not support impeachment, but I do support continuing with the investigation.
David Kim?
I don't believe Richard Nixon was very honorable. I mean, he's a man who thought he was above the law. We have a president that also believes likewise. But we need to look at the facts, right? So we need to absolutely protect the special investigation that's going on with Robert Mueller. There's bipartisan discussion to make sure that investigation proceeds. And the Constitution is very clear. We as Congress people have to review that report, then draw up articles of impeachment, and then decide whether or not we will vote. And I will cast my vote at that time. But it's ridiculous, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, to say I'm going to impeach or not impeach without looking at the facts, right? We are not Republicans here standing up. We don't accuse people by tweet. We don't have a trial by the media and the public. That's not the way democracy works. And I want to make sure that we follow our constitutional obligation, and I will vote accordingly when that time comes.
Ethan Pham.
My dad and granddad fought against communism in Vietnam. They fought against an authoritarian regime for freedom and democracy over there. You know, it's very unfortunate that we have an American president who seems to be providing cover for the Russians in their meddling with our elections. We have an American president who has called the press the enemy of the American people, who has brought his kids into this administration to run the government, who has bashed our judges who are members of an independent judiciary in our system of government, and he has fired prosecutors in charge of investigating him. My family did not leave one authoritarian regime to go live in another. This issue is very important to me. However, having said that, I have faith in Robert Mueller. I want him to finish his investigation. And at that time, when the investigation is fully conducted, we will proceed. And if impeachment is what it's called for, then I will be in full force behind that.
All right. And from our attorney on the panel, Steve Riley.
Thank you. Okay, Karen. With every crazy tweet that the president releases each day, he's engaging in bad conduct, dishonorable conduct, frankly. But to this point, I've not seen evidence that merits impeachment. Plenty of suggestions of it exist, and I think certainly the Mueller investigation needs to be carried out to its fruition. If that investigation shows that there is evidence of impeachment, yes, I would support that. The attacks that this president makes daily on the press, on the judiciary, on private individuals in this country are extremely troubling and even dangerous. We need a new Congress that's going to serve as a check on this president's worst impulses. However, again, for impeachment, I think we need to await the outcome of the Mueller investigation. We do, in the interim, need to pass a bill that protects Robert Mueller from being dismissed in the event that Mr. Trump decides to attempt to fire him.
All right, Kurt Yeomans, your next question. Who would you like to question?
If I can question all of them, I'd like to ask, Mr. Riley mentioned this earlier in his comments about the telephone town halls. That's been a concern among members of the community about the current congressman. How would you guys handle public engagement, handling face-to-face public engagement with the public? And we can start with Mr. Riley.
I think the key, Kurt, is to get back here from Washington and meet with people face to face and not be afraid to take their questions and engage in open discussion with one's constituents. That's what elected officials are supposed to do. Rob has gone to Washington and has become a part of the inside the Beltway crowd, if you will. He sees things from that perspective. He is disengaged from the workaday world back here in the home district. Rob's been burned a couple of times at town halls when he actually physically appeared. Since then, he's gone to the telephone town hall format. That's a way of just kind of brushing aside your constituents and trying to regulate what you hear from your constituents. That's just wrong. I would be back here meeting regularly with all comers among constituents here in the district to find out about their concerns, to advise them of what's going on in Washington, and to solicit their input in those outcomes.
I want to also say, Ethan Pham, you're an attorney as well.
Absolutely. So, having been born in a communist country, I immigrated here from a communist country, and my dad and granddads fought against that communist regime. The ideals of democracy are sacred to me. Okay? I love our representative democracy. And so in order to adequately represent the interests of the people, you have to interact with them. I serve on the Gwinnett County Transit Advisory Board. I serve on the Gwinnett County Police Foundation. I serve as legal counsel for the Atlanta International Night Market. My wife and I, we're both very active in our community. I have a track record of interacting with people in the community of District 7. And so when I go to Washington, D.C., you can be rest assured that I will be a representative of the people because I embrace this process. I want to represent the people. And you can only represent the people adequately if you interact with them and go out there and talk to them, figure out what their issues are. That's what I've done from the get-go. I am the only candidate that can bring the diverse communities together here in District 7. And as your congressman, I promise I will be the representative of the people. Thank you.
All right, David Kim.
You know, I've been an educator and frankly been in the business of customer service my entire life. I mean, I've helped tens of thousands of students and families, get into the college of their dreams in both, red states and blue states. And having to listen to individuals, regardless of their background, regardless of their viewpoint, is something that I've always been driven to. We need to make sure that our congressmen, like the other candidates have been saying, are in our neighborhoods, they're in our communities, that they're listening, that they're hearing from people directly what those concerns are. More importantly, though, is that we have a staff that is accessible to the community. My campaign staff looks like the district. We have African Americans, we have Latinas, we have Asian Americans, we have Caucasians. I mean, it looks like what the 7th District looks like. And if you don't have those access points that people can comfortably talk to, they're never going to engage our government.
Melissa Davis.
Yes. I have been a public servant for over 20 years, and much of my time in government, I've worked with constituent services and in financial management. I understand what the needs are of people. When you go into public service, you make yourself available to help others. We have now an administration and a representative who's lost sight of that. When I decided to run for Congress, I decided that I needed to make myself available to my neighbors, to my friends, to the other residents in the county and the district. So when you run for Congress, you're saying that I want to help others, that I want to be a change for others. And so you have to make yourself available to hear what those concerns are. You can't do and be effective in Congress if you don't know what the constituents' concerns are. So absolutely, when I am your Congresswoman, I will make myself available as I'm doing now. I'm going around the district, I'm talking to everyone, and I'm listening to what their concerns are. And so that's what I believe needs to happen. Thank you.
All right, Carolyn Bordeaux.
Okay. When I'm elected Congresswoman, what I will do will be an extension of what I'm doing every day now. I do meet and greets all over the district. I go to meetings and talk to folks. I've assembled an advisory board of folks from many, many different walks of life. One of the things I've found is different policy issues filter in different ways through different communities and are perceived in different ways. And so making sure that you're really talking to folks who really are diverse and have different perspectives is very, very important. But beyond this, my door is always open, and I will have staff that is out in the community working with the city councils. I will be going to the churches and also reaching out in every way that I can think of to make sure that I hear the voices of the people in the district.
And Kathleen Allen.
As your representative in Congress, I represent all of the constituents in the 7th District. And that means those who are undocumented, that means children, that means felons who have not retrieved their right to vote, and it includes voters. So yes, I will be having town halls. I went to the college across the street from Gabby Giffords at the same time that she was at Scripps and I was at Claremont McKenna. So I think of her often when she was out with her constituents and getting shot. That is a concern of mine, but I am brave, I suppose, in the way that I will continue to do those open-air town halls. That was one of the first things I did when I started campaigning. And I have also gone door to door to folks who are voters and folks who are not yet voters and talk to them. And I will continue to do that. I laugh when I hear that Congress is on vacation again. That means they're in the district and they should be working. This is where my family is, my children, my husband, my father who lives with us, our dog. I will be here as much as possible and out with my neighbors and all of our constituents in this district. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Giancarlo, you have the next question.
Sure. To everybody.
If you'd like.
So there's a lot of talks about cutting federal funds to jurisdictions who support sanctuary cities. And I want to find out what's your take on that. And I'll start with you, Caroline.
I deplore that the Trump administration is doing that. I think that we have levels of government that need to be respected, and we don't need a heavy-handed federal government telling cities what they can do. I don't know if any of the other candidates are as progressive as I am when it comes to immigration reform, but I want to clearly state that I support a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. I believe that that pathway must include paying a fine as restitution for the cost of immigration enforcement when they overstayed legal entry or entered illegally. But we have a number of crimes in this country that we allow people to pay a fine as restitution. And I believe that undocumented immigrants should have that system and should be able to pay off their debt and their fine and become citizens at some point. And I will pursue that my first day as your representative in this district. Thank you.
All right, Carolyn Bordeaux.
Okay. No, I do not agree with that policy. And I think what's interesting is that in Gwinnett, we actually have the opposite, where our law enforcement are actively cooperating with ICE through the 287G waiver program. I think there's a challenge. I think we have to reach out to the Latino community and really engage them in the democratic project. They're struggling. They're not represented in government the way they need to be. And therefore, a lot of the policies coming out of Gwinnett and local government are, very contrary to their interests. Yes, I think we need to have a path to citizenship. I think it needs to take some time, and there should be a fine at the end. But there should be a way, a status that people have, and a clear path for them to become, fully participating members of our community.
All right, Melissa Davis.
Yes, I think the policy is simply a scare tactic. I'm very disappointed that it was ever even mentioned. But I do applaud, and I'm very happy for those who have fought against it and said we are still going to help all of those who are in need of help, all these immigrants who have been a part of this community, who has helped to increase economic growth in this country. And so I absolutely am against this policy. But what we have to understand is the immigrants that are living here today are just as much a part of this community as we are, as you are, as I am. And so I would do everything that I can to make sure that they have a path to citizenship. We also have to address the fact that they're here working, and oftentimes these business owners are using them to make themselves richer, but which is unfair to them as part of this community. So again, I will work as hard as I can to make sure that they are given a path to citizenship. Thank you.
David Kim?
Yeah, to answer your question, it's no. But, one thing that really just confuses me is that, it seems like the Republicans, when it comes to issues of immigration, want to expand the reach of the federal government, right? Whether it's making, our police officers ICE agents, whether it's not respecting the decisions that our municipal and community governments are making with regards to immigration. We haven't had comprehensive immigration reform since Ronald Reagan. I mean, we're still using the same laws since then. I mean, it's no wonder that every year we continue to see the number of undocumented increase. And that number is anywhere from 11 to 20 million. I mean, it's one of the greatest human tragedies that we have in this country right now. We are a compassionate country, and we need to show that compassion through better laws. Providing a pathway to citizenship for Dreamers is an absolute must. I had dinner a few months ago with some Dreamers, and one of the quotes that really touched me is that the country we were born in is foreign to us, and yet the country we were raised in looks at us as foreigners. That is not right. We need to have comprehensive immigration reform. We need to put a check and balance on this president and the attorney general, and we need to do the right thing as a people.
Time. All right. Thank you very much, Ethan Pham.
Thank you. As the only immigrant in this race, and as a former city attorney who advised local governments on these issues, and with someone who has a wife who is an immigration attorney, the issue of immigration is very personal to me. We see on a regular basis families being torn apart over just minor traffic infractions now because of 287G. Gwinnett County is the most diverse county in the entire southeastern United States. It is the fourth most diverse county in America. Yet we have a lot of our neighbors, like I said, being torn apart, families being torn, families that have come here and want to contribute back to the society. They're being torn apart. Most immigrant families are just like mine. They want to come here to have a better life and to have a better future for their kids and to contribute back to our society. We need to do better. 287G creates distrust in the community. It creates distrust between the community and the police departments. And so we have people who are victims of abuse, who are fearful of coming forward to report these crimes because of 287G. So
right.
I disagree with 287G.
That's our time. Thank you very much, Steve Riley.
I would oppose attempts by the federal government to cut off funding to sanctuary cities. But let me go further and say this. So many of our Republican friends forget something very important when it comes to the Dreamers and many of the undocumented folks that are here in this country and have been here for an extended period. And that's this. We invited these folks here. Oh, yes, we did. With a wink and a nod, we invited them to come here and work in our meatpacking plants, in construction, in carpet mills, in agriculture, and we've all benefited as a result of their being here and contributing to the economy. Our cost of living has decreased. We've been able to live better as a result. It's a matter of humanity, fairness, and justice that we create a path to citizenship for the Dreamers and for others who've been in this country for extended periods, have raised their families here, contributed to the economy, and yes, paid taxes, sales taxes, in many instances have even had withholding done through FICA, and they'll never collect those Social Security funds that are in the trust fund. So yes, we need comprehensive and humane immigration reform.
That's our time, and we really are short on time, so I'm just going to ask you all one question. I need a yes or a no, not how you would want to do it, yes or no, simply. We're going to begin with Kathleen Allen. Would you vote to keep or rescind Obamacare?
Keep.
Yes, keep.
Yes, keep.
Yes.
Absolutely keep.
Yes, we would keep it.
All right. We are out of time on that round, so that's all the time we have for questions for the candidates right now. Now we've got 60 seconds for closing statements. And Ethan Pham, you're going to get the first closing statement of the morning.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here to have a conversation with you all. In this election, you're looking for two things. First, you're looking for someone who understands you, who you can trust. And second, you're looking for someone who can activate all the diverse communities in District 7 to beat Rob Woodall in November. You know I won't cut the social safety net because I'm here because of it. You know that I'll fight for real representation because I've been waiting for it myself. You know that I'm going to stand up to Donald Trump because my family did not leave one authoritarian regime to go live in another. I ask for your support and your vote on May 22nd. And again, in November. My name is Ethan Pham. My last name is spelled P-H-A-M, ethanpham@congress.com. Thank you so much.
All right, David Kim, it's your turn.
You know, this is a critical election, not just for us, but for the entire nation. We're here on the right side of history and the issues, whether it's the Dreamers to health care, from gun safety to education. I'm not just in this for my children. I'm in this for all children. I've been a lifelong educator, consensus builder. I've dedicated my life to helping young people achieve success by building a nationwide company with over 200 locations in both red and blue states. I know how to win. I know it's going to take determination and the ability to inspire new and old voters who've stayed at home, been left out, felt unwanted. I invite you all to join me in this campaign. We've had a 23-year failed experiment with Republicans representing us in the 7th. We haven't won since 1992. Let's return to our Democratic and Georgia roots. Roosevelt, Kennedy, King, and Carter. I'm running to restore that tradition of common sense and integrity. My name is David Kim. I ask for your vote on May 22nd.
Carolyn Bordeaux, your closing statement.
Okay. Thank you all for doing this, having this wonderful forum. I am the daughter of teachers, and they had a deep commitment to public service, and that is something that I have carried in my heart throughout my life and has informed what I've done. I'm currently a professor of public policy at the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies. I've also served with several U.S. representatives and a U.S. senator. I was director of the Georgia Senate Budget and Evaluation Office, and I founded the Center for State and Local Finance. And my students work all over the metro area. I am running for office because I woke up on November 9th and Donald Trump had been elected a president. And I recognized that I needed to step up for the country that I believe in. My country is diverse, it is inclusive, it is global, it is not racist, it is not sexist, it is not isolationist. And we have a congressman in this district who is joined at the hip with this president. I am here to stand up a formidable campaign that will be a force to be reckoned with in the fall, and I ask for your support on May 22nd to take it forward.
Melissa Davis, your closing statement.
Yes, we live in a country that has many opportunities. People have achieved the unimaginable. Yet we have people who are having to make decisions between health care, food, and housing. As I've gone around this district and I've talked to so many people over the last several months, they told me they want a representative who understands where they are, who can meet them where they are and help them change their circumstances. I came from very humble beginnings, and I understand what it means to struggle. And so I am the person who can help them change their circumstances, who can restore hope and an American dream. So please show your support and vote for Melissa Davis for Congress on May 22nd, because I have been where you are, and I want to fight for you the way my community fought for me. Thank you so much.
Steve Riley.
I'm running for Congress because I'm alarmed at the direction of our great nation under the presidency of Donald Trump. Distraction, division, delusion, dysfunction, fake news, and alternative facts, these are all features of the Trump administration and their enablers in Congress. These are features we simply cannot allow to become the new normal in America. We need a Congress that's going to serve as a check against the worst impulses of this president. But at the same time, we need a Congress that's going to bring to Washington a positive and inclusive plan for moving our country forward. That starts with restoring middle-class economic opportunity and making health care affordable and accessible for all Americans. Please take a look at my campaign website at steverileyforcongress.com. There you'll find the details about my positions on the issues. I thank you for being here today and for your attention and giving us this time, and I ask you for your support and your vote in the Democratic primary on May 22nd.
And our final closing statement will come from Kathleen Allen.
I thank the moderators, I thank the candidates who are here, and most importantly, I want to thank the viewers and the listeners for participating in this debate. I have been a voter ever since I was 19 years old and my mother was on the primary ballot. I am a true progressive Democrat. For all the years that I have lived in Norcross with my family and raised my children with my husband and now my father in our home, I have been an active part of our community. I don't just talk about it, I actually go out and do it. When Norcross passed a law that said people couldn't stay in extended stays more than 30 days, I helped to rewrite it for them so that families wouldn't be homeless and our students wouldn't be homeless. I am running a campaign on my values, which start with honesty and empathy. And I have found that constituents all over the 7th District appreciate that. My name is Kathleen Allen. I am your first choice for Congress. My website is electKathleenAllen.com. I ask for your support May 22nd, likely July 24th, and November 6th. Thank you.
All right, and that concludes our debate. Thank you all very much. We would like to remind voters that the primary elections will be held Tuesday, May 22nd, and early voting has already begun across the state. So thanks to the candidates and to our panel of esteemed journalists. We'd also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging today's debate. For more information about the Atlanta Press Club and all of the debates they'll host this primary election season, visit atlantapressclub.org. This debate will be archived there and on Georgia Public Broadcasting's website at gpb.org. I'm Karen Greer. Thanks for joining us at the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series.